Good morning. How's everybody doing this morning? Okay, first off, thank you to AFCEA International, AFCEA Maryland chapter, because as of this morning, and I realized as I was talking to Paul and Mike, that getting an accurate count of attendees and registrations is almost like we're counting votes in an election. Very hard to get a true accounting. But as of today, as of right now, we are above last year by a couple hundred, which I think is an all-time high for TechNet Cyber. So huge round of applause to AFCEA International. I also want to mention that I went to a few socials last night. I was definitely in before most of you. And I realized that we need something to get the juices flowing, get the blood flowing. And so our VI team put a video together. So I'd like them to roll the video. Why do we like to show the video? Think of all those missions that are in that video. I will tell you, there is no mission in the Department of Defense that either DISA or JFHQ-DODIN is not enabling, driving, and supporting. Now, there may be a one-off way in the dark corners of the mission set of the department, but I would say I'd still say 100% of the missions we support, drive, and enable. So that's pretty powerful. So those who are part of those organizations, and oh, by the way, we're hiring. So all the good talent out there, come on down. I know there's a career fair going on, and so look forward to having some folks who really want to get after the mission in supporting the department. As we look at the theme of this year's event, right? Align, adapt, and accelerate. If you think about the aligning and accelerating, really what that is that's velocity, right? That's velocity of action to win, which is a theme that we have on the agency side that's really trying to drive forward how do we move faster to maintain that positional advantage. So if you think about alignment first and foremost, right? We are aligned on a particular adversary. That does not mean that what's going on in Europe, that's what's going on in the Middle East, that General Baird is significantly involved in supporting General Carrillo. That doesn't mean that that's not important. What it means is, as a department, we are aligning towards the strategic threat. And we are more aligned, I would offer today, than we've ever been. And so when you look at that threat, there's some things that I want to show you and highlight that really brings to bear what that threat is. So first off, they're listening. They're looking at our doctrine, studying our doctrine. They're analyzing our strategies and our plans. They are focused on disrupting our critical infrastructure, targeting our critical infrastructure, making that a focus area. And they are studying in detail our national and our DoD strategy. Here's a slide that many of you have seen, and this is the agency's focus on, and I know we try to stay away from saying two terms, right? ZT and AI. You can't have a briefing without those two, and I know I think I'm in like 3 minutes and I've already said both. But this is our notion of our slide. This is from a think tank in China. Excuse me. They've taken the document, they've translated it, and they're studying it. If you look at, even today, just look at intellectual property theft that's going on in the United States. From an economic standpoint, between $225 and $600 billion are lost from an economic standpoint. Now, I would hope that from an estimation standpoint, we could get a little bit closer than 225 and 600 million, because that's a significant gap in numbers. But even from a low standpoint, think how significant that is. As you've seen even in open source reporting, right? We've seen where the PRC is actively targeting the critical infrastructure in the United States. There's an information campaign against the United States. So this isn't just DOD. This is across the board. This is a national threat. And so as we think about the alignment of that national threat, that's what we talk about as part of today's session. And you also can think about, not only are they targeting, and it's not just for intellectual property, I would offer it's targeting to gain and maintain a positional advantage in the future. That's a far cry from just foreign intelligence. So when you look at the department today, I would offer, as I mentioned a little earlier, we are more aligned today than we ever have against this threat. Look at what General Hawk mentioned yesterday as he talked about the defense industrial base and the partnerships that we have that are critical to that. When you look at the things that you're doing and looking at each and every day from a commercial standpoint, and the PRC is after your intellectual property. When you look at the national strategy, the cyber strategy, a lot of the focus that's going on, it's related to the People's Republic of China. So I don't think we can overstate the threat that we have to, not just from a Department of Defense standpoint, but from a day-to-day living standpoint. When you look at what we're doing within JFHQ-DODIN and DISA, our strategies align the same thing, right? If you look at our DISA Next strategy, in Major Quarter, you out there? Where you at, Dave? Okay, Dave right there in about 3 quarters back. Army strategist. First time that DISA has had an Army strategist. He is at the heart. He is the one who authored. I thought I wouldn't bring him up here because he said, no way, so I'll just highlight him. He is the author of the DISA Next strategy. 4 strategic imperatives, 4 operational imperatives, 8 objectives. To sum it up, the first strategic objective is, how do we operate, secure, and defend DAO DISA? That's DISA's area of operation. Some people say, well, that's just the DISN. Nope, that is every single product and capability that DISA provides. 240, I think, Mr. Martin, 240 programs and projects-ish. 2 million miles of transport that we operate and or manage. You look at all of the programs, when you talk CJAD C2, GCCSJ is a foundation to all of the other efforts that are going on within CJAD C2. Our ability to operate, secure, and defend that is more important than anything else that we do. Because our warfighters, our combatant commands, our senior leaders need that capability at the time and place of our choosing, not letting an adversary be able to disrupt it. And then if they try and disrupt it, we got to have the resiliency to make it work. The second area is really focused on strategic C3, right? I would offer it's kind of a subset of the first, but it's really focused on those national leader communications, NC3, DRSN, those capabilities, at the SAP level programs. Those capabilities have to be available, A, on a bad day, or when our senior leaders need to discuss key important aspects of our missions. And national level discussions, right? White House Communications Agency, Brian Jorgensen, the commander right now, the voice of the president. Isn't that right, Mike Black? Focus on making sure that the president at any point in time is able to communicate with head of states. Pretty important and powerful job. The third area is really focused, so how do we get to the future faster? And I would say, industry, this is where you come into play. How do we jump to where we are today to the future faster so we can maintain that position of advantage? The final area is whether you want to say analytic superiority, whether you want to say data. Caroline Kaharski, who is our chief data officer, really focused on how do we take full advantage of data and not just censoring and monitoring. I think that short sells it. It's all about how do you take advantage of that data and that information from all the sensors we have everywhere and bring it together. Captain Sean Nelson. Sean, are you here? He's our J5 at JFHQ-DODIN. He is the author of the JFHQ-DODIN campaign plan. That campaign plan is focused on making sure that JFHQ-DODIN maintains its position of advantage each and every day. And how do you do that? Right? As we think about the adaptation and the acceleration, the things that the JFHQ-DODIN team is doing each and every day, first, it's battle space awareness. If you can't see and understand the battle space, and it's not just IP space. This is the technology that's on that IP space. This is the forces that are aligned to that. This is the static forces, which I don't like that term, but some people use that. The static forces like the CSSPs and our network operations personnel. Understanding that battle space is key to everything else that we do. Because you can't protect, you can't secure, I would offer you can't even direct, which is the key thing that JFHQ-DODIN does, is direct operations to secure, operate, and defend the DODIN, which, as those who've heard me say, right, the third largest conglomeration of networks in the world, compared to countries, not companies, and not states. And the final piece of that, it's really focused on partnerships, right? And we'll talk about that in a little bit. So how are we adapting and how are we accelerating? On the agency side, as you look at the left, I will tell you the big focus within the agency is how do we, as a combat support agency, right, that's our identity, that's where we've got to maintain our vigilance. How are we driving support to the combatant commands and the agencies? Military services, I love you. But I can't build a wooden shoe for each of you in this integrated environment. So the framework is focused on combatant commands and agencies, because that is our identity, that's our mission. And if services want to jump on board with what we are doing, happy to have you. But we can't build the wooden shoes. So, DoDNet, first and foremost. Common IT for our agencies. Right? It's at 30 sites right now, 10,000 personnel are leveraging it, and we are ramping up significantly this year over the next 12 months, and there's going to be at least 4, 5, or 6 agencies that are going to be onboarded. Isn't that right, Mr. Barnhurst? Okay, Thunderdome. Right, Chris Pym, you in the audience? Chris Pym is our program manager. He's probably out drumming up business for Thunderdome. Oh, there you go. Chris Pim in the middle. He's our program manager for Thunderdome. Right? He's the one that the Chinese translated. His capabilities and what he's trying to do. Hopefully not much more. Yeah, he's published in multiple languages. Thank you, Eric. Driving Thunderdome, that's the Zero Trust umbrella, but it's not just a contract vehicle, right? This is everything that we are doing within Zero Trust for the agencies. And then we're working a contract vehicle to bring the combatant commands on board to this environment. Global transport, right? I mentioned 2 million miles of infrastructure transport. That doesn't even take into account what we're doing with the Space Force with PLEO and capabilities within PLEO, bringing that to bear so that it's agnostic transport and it's available. The work that we're doing with commercial companies and taking advantage of your infrastructure, taking advantage of your co-location sites, taking advantage of your data centers, all bringing the resiliency and capability that our forces need and our mission partners need. If you think about the apps and the services, right? EMBMJ, Electromagnetic Battle Management System, just released to our mission partners. Situational awareness, first time they really had an enterprise situational awareness capability that's delivered by Mr. Martin's team. Next phase is the decision support tool, which will be out in 6 to 9 months because we just let that contract out. Right? A lot of people forget about electromagnetic spectrum. Well, that's at the heart of a lot of what we are doing from a mission standpoint. If you think about DoD 365, SEC, right? We have it in IL5, we have it in IL6, we're working on IL7. How do we bring that more joint? IL6, 1 tenant. I know there's others who want multiple tenants, but from a warfighting standpoint, we need 1. So that no matter where you're at in the environment, you have that. There's an IT warfighting study that's going on within the Joint Staff and CIO that's going to highlight how do we bring a warfighting integrated joint warfighting network to bear. A lot of movement within the department to make that a reality. DISA is at the heart of that. Nothing that we can do can be done without ICAM and identity, right? That's the crown jewel. So we have to make sure we protect that and secure that. There's over 3 million authentications a day into the federated ICAM, into the ICAM that goggles, right? The dog with the goggles that every single person who's on DoD gets to see every day. That's at the heart of that. And remember Gabe from last year, right? The system administrator. Yeah, still going strong as a department. And then, as we mentioned, analytic superiority. And the analytic superiority is on both sides, right? This is on both organizations. But you think about DAO DISA, right, which is the largest area of operation that we have within the Department of Defense. JFHQ-DODIN has to take that plus 44 others and have unity of action across the board. So as Department of Defense individuals and organizations buy a capability, right? It's up to JFHQ-DODIN to understand from a combat development standpoint, how's that going to be employed? Does the force, to understand battle space awareness, have the training? Do we have the advanced tactics, techniques, and procedures necessary to make that a reality and to take full advantage of the capabilities? Understanding how all that fits together is where we get unity of action. So as OSD ANS and INS and R&E and the services are going out and acquiring, working with you to acquire the next best technology, it's got to be unified. So your help in making sure that A, it's simple, B, that it's scalable, see that it's interoperable and integratable with other capabilities to make our force the most proficient force in the world and to maintain that level of capability. Because if not, we will continue to struggle with, I would offer blue on blue events, and we'll continue to struggle to be agile enough and maneuver enough. Mick McDaniel, who's the DISA Global Commander, he's working hand in hand with Mike Reeder, who's the J3 at JFHQ-DODIN, and driving how do we maneuver the domain itself, right? And I think we have a pilot going on with General Barrett's team on how we take the analytics, take those analytics and drive a defensive posture that's even more capable than it is today. That's part of the partnerships. And I would offer the partnerships within the department is the best it's ever been, and the partnerships within industry are the best that it has ever been. But that takes work, right? And so as you look at what we are trying to do, I would ask, and I haven't talked to AI, but I'll talk that real quick. Steve Wallace, Steve, you in there? Steve Wallace, the Chief Technology Officer over at DISA, we had a conversation about AI earlier. And he goes, we're going to take a measured approach. Usually a conversation with me that starts out with measured doesn't go well. Because we want to drive things. But he has a good point. Jumping to AI for AI's sake does not help. How do we what problem are we trying to solve, and how do we drive that? And how do we leverage AI to drive that problem? How do we leverage AI to get better battle space awareness for the JFHQ-DODIN team? How do we leverage AI to take our endpoint capabilities and understand where the needle in the haystack is, which means where is the adversary in our networks? Those are the things that we need to focus on when we think about AI. So that's industry, that's where we need your help. I'm at about the 10-minute mark, so I think I will stop there from an understanding of kind of what we are trying to do within JFHQ-DODIN, as well as DISA, and the handshakes that we have going on between the organizations cannot be overstated, because it's critical to the forward edge of the battle space. It's critical to the work that we're doing with the service cyber components, and it's critical to the work that we're doing with you each and every day. So look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We have a few questions from the audience. The first one is a two-parter. How do you manage the overlap in cyber responsibility between the civilian teams you oversee at DISA and the uniformed teams you lead at JFHQ? And the second part, how do you make sure work isn't redundant and that things don't fall through the cracks of these shared interests?
Okay, good question. So first off, let me clarify something. Both organizations have military, civilian, and contractor personnel, right? Both organizations are aligned to the Department of Defense missions of secure operating and defending. One is doing that in a smaller area of operation. One is doing it across the entire department. Some would say that as I'm working with both organizations, that I'm not doing a great job of it. What I would tell you is I have amazing individuals as deputy commanders and deputy directors. I have amazing individuals as R3s. I have amazing individuals who are making sure that they stay aligned in what we are trying to do. From a capability standpoint, right, we have a couple of ongoing capabilities at our boundary that the teams are working hand in hand in making sure that we stay aligned with the combat development piece, the acquisition piece, and the capabilities that it provides. So the teams work hand in hand. From an organizational standpoint, we have a lot of meetings that are combined to make sure that there's no daylight between what organizations are trying to do. There's a bunch of working groups that are going on each and every day as JFHQ-DODIN defines the operational requirements, and DISA either as a service provider or an operator, secure, or defender of DAO DISA, that they stay aligned. So I hope that answered your question, but if not, let me know.
Thank you, sir. The next question, how have you seen Chinese intrusion efforts evolve over the past year in the face of DoD migration to enterprise cloud providers?
In this setting, what I will say is the PRC will continue to focus on those areas that are critical to our missions. Just look at what Voltyphoon is doing each and every day, right? They're going after critical sectors within our infrastructure that DoD relies on each and every day. They are going after the key technologies that we rely on each and every day. So how I would say this is they will continue to focus on those areas that are important to our operational plans and our operational missions. So that's about all I can say here in this forum.
Thank you, sir. I think we have time for one, maybe two more questions. The first one, can you elaborate more on how DODIN plans to expand? You said that more agencies will be involved. Who are these agencies specifically?
Yeah, so for DoDNet, the goal is every single Department of Defense agency will be part of DoDNet, as well as the combatant commands. Whether we call it DoDNet or CommandNet from a contractual standpoint, at the end of the day, I would offer the more organizations that we have that is part of an integrated network, an integrated environment, that includes identity, right? It includes cloud, right? I didn't even talk about cloud and the nearly $800 million worth of contract task orders that our J9 experts have done. The on-prem work that we have with Stratus, the work that we're doing with Joe, working with commercial providers in our data centers. So all that environment is what all of our agencies and the combatant commands are what we're focused on bringing to bear for them, so that can be integrated, and then continue working with the services and how we make that interoperable with what the services are offering.
Thank you, sir. And the final question, can you tell us about how the Cyber Operational Readiness Assessment is going since the March 1st rollout to replace CCRI?
It's going amazing. Now, those who are going through it may not say that, but from our standpoint, here's what I would offer. I think it's going great. A couple things with that. First and foremost, we are focused on key indicators, right? The things that really matter, right? Identity. How are you protecting privileged users and privileged capabilities? How are you doing on your forward-facing assets? How are you doing on cross-domain, which we haven't talked about, right? Those things is really what really defines the readiness of your cyber domain and your cyber posture for your organization. Have we found a lot of bumps? Yes. But is that unexpected? No, I wouldn't say that. But remember, this is just an episodic environment right now. The end goal is really having continuous assessments and continuous monitoring of those critical capabilities and those critical assets to really give you a day-to-day understanding. Because how many have been part of the old CCRI and even the CORAs where you ramp up, you get prepared, you get your folks working 12, 14 hours to make sure that you pass this test, and then 3 months later, how's your posture? So the goal is to really get a true understanding at any one time of what the risk is, and then have a conversation with that mission owner, right? Because it's a shared risk. Mission owner and General Hawk, as your cyber command commander, both own that risk. And it's that conversation between the two, usually through the service cyber components and JFHQ-DODIN, to understand that piece of the risk. Continuously monitoring and assessing is where we really need to go. So from an acceleration and an adaption standpoint, that's what we want to focus on, is how do we get to a more continuous monitoring and analysis and assessment. And again, it's not just logging and censoring and monitoring is how do we leverage the analytic piece of this to give you a true picture of risk. The question that General Blackwell and I have whenever we walk into the JFHQ-DODIN Ops Center is, are we riskier today than yesterday? And being able to show that through some dashboard, but the dashboard is less important than the analytics behind it, be able to show that to understand how risky you are, because then your next question is, if you're more risky, is what? What are we doing about it? And what do we need to do about it? And does the department need to do something about it? So part of the Cora goodness is on these key risk areas, we can go into the department, which we are, and get the department behind improving it across the enterprise and not just for a particular unit, base post camper station. So I know long answer, I apologize, but I get really excited when we talk about assessments and readiness because that's at the heart of what we do. Sorry, Paul.
Ladies and gentlemen, that was our final question.